Hi everyone, and welcome back to another panel company video. And in today's video we are going to be talking about ceiling panels, how to fit them, how to cut them, how to measure your ceiling so you get as many panels that you need. These are all the tools that I'm going to recommend that you use for this job. It's important that you've got the right stuff, so just talk a little bit about what everything is. Obviously we've got a Stanley knife. That's if you want to cut the panels with a Stanley knife, which you can do. Especially with ceiling panels, they're only 5mm thick. You don't need any special tools to be cutting them. I'm going to be using a wood saw because that's just how I like to do it, and that has a square on it, so you don't need the Stanley knife and the speed square, you can just have this. Something to screw the panels to the ceiling with. We recommend you glue and screw them, but you know, obviously not everybody has access to that. You can just glue them if you want to. It's just a bit of an extra peace of mind. Tape measure, pencil for marking them, a silicone gun. These are really cheap. I've got a nice one, but you can pick these up for just a few quid off our website. And then some adhesive to stick the panels to the ceiling with. And then just a straight edge. This is just for when you're doing long cuts. If you just want to join up the lines and you don't have to mark it as much, you can use just a level. And we'll get started with the ceiling panels. Right, so now I'm going to talk you through how to measure your ceiling, make sure you get the right amount of panels, and also making sure that the last cut that you do is not just a tiny one and you get a decent sized panel, because it looks quite bad when you just have a little slither at the end. So the first thing you want to do is measure your room as a box. The panels are 2.6 long, so if you've got a room that's longer than 2.6, you might want to go the other way if that's less, or we do sell ceiling panels for longer rooms. The ones I'm using today are 2.6, so I'm going to be going this ways with the panels. So the first thing you want to do, the panels are 250mm wide, so because I'm going this way, I want to mark out on my ceiling every 250mm, just like this. And I'm going to do this for the whole room on this side and then this side as well. That'll just mean that you know when you're measuring across, you know where you're measuring to, so you get a square cut. If you don't do that, you can end up measuring on this side somewhere that is absolutely nowhere near where that panel's actually going to be, and then you'll end up with a wonky cut and it'll look really bad and you'll have to do it again. So now we've done that this way, we need to make sure that our end cut is going to be a decent sized panel. So if you pop over to the other side with me, I'll show you what that looks like. Right, so as you can see now, we've got all the panels marked out of where they will be. And if you look right at the end here, we've only got about 15mm. Now, if we just did our ceiling and started with that, that'd look quite bad when we come to the end. So if this happens to you, all you need to do is take a little bit off your first panel, and that'll just give you an extra gap here. So my first panel, I'm going to take 50mm off. That'll leave me with a 60mm cut at the end. And that'll just mean it looks a lot nicer when we come to finish, and you'll see that at the end of the video as well. So now you've got everything marked up, you're ready to do your cross measurements, and then you can start fitting your ceiling. Right, so we've got our ceiling marked out, we know what we're going to be doing on the first one, and I do recommend that if you're doing a ceiling that's any longer than this is about 1.8, if you're doing anything longer than that, just get somebody to help you, because otherwise it is really difficult. You can do it, but it just makes your life a lot easier when you're measuring and things like that. So like you can see on this side, we've done the same here, just measuring out each panel, and that just means that when we measure across, I can go from this mark, just there, to this mark, and I know that's exactly where the panel is going to be, and you can get a lot more of an accurate measurement doing it that way. If this wall isn't straight, when you offer this panel up, obviously we're going to be taking about 60mm off, like I said, off the first one. But if this isn't straight, you'll need to, what we call scribe the panel to the wall. It's a little bit more in depth, but I'll go through that in the next bit. Right, so now we've measured our ceiling, we're going to go on to measuring the panel and cutting the panel. So we're going to grab a tape measure, pop it on the end, and apply our measurement. Obviously, if you're using a speed square and your measurement's square, you only need to mark it once. If you've got a deviation in your measurement, then you'll need to obviously mark the other side as well. And now I'm going to show you how we actually cut it using the Stanley knife and the speed square. Right, so pop your speed square onto your marking. So you see my pencil mark just there. apply a little bit of pressure onto your speed square, and all we're trying to do is score the panel, so we don't need to go crazy with the pressure here. Just like that, be careful. And then if you move your panel to the edge of your workbench or whatever you're working on, and give it a push, that creates a nice break. And if you pull that back towards yourself, that just breaks off just like that, and you've got a nice cut. And that's as easy as that. So now we've done the Stanley knife method, we're going to move on to the wood saw method. Now, like I said in the intro, most wood saws have a natural 90-degree angle when they come from the factory. Just check, it will say on the saw 90 and 45 if yours has one. That just makes it a lot easier when you're marking out. You don't have to use a Stanley knife and a set square, you can just use a wood saw. So if you grab your tape measure and pop your mark onto your panel. Just mark this up, 2 meters. And then if you grab your wood saw, grab that onto your mark. And then, like I said, as long as you've got this 90-degree edge buttered up with your panel, you'll get a nice straight line to cut down. Just like that. Right, so just use the thumb as a guide, nice and slowly. Just follow your line. And then when you get to the end, just hold this one, and that'll just prevent it from snapping off. Just like that. Right, so as I mentioned in the first part of the video, once we've measured, we found out that we got just 10 millimeters at this end. So we want to create a bigger cut at that end, so it's a little bit easier for us when we get to the end. So I'm going to take off the thickness of this wood. You can use anything for this as long as it's square, it's very important. So a scrap piece of wood's fine. So we're going to offer the panel up, put it tight against the back wall. Obviously we've already cut it to length, we're happy with that. And then we're going to use this block against the back wall with our pencil and draw a line, and that'll give us the profile of that back wall. We can cut that and then our panel will fit perfectly. I'm on my own, so I'm going to screw the panel through the groove section, which is what I'm going to recommend that you do anyway. So I'll just get that done first, and then we'll jump back in once it's ready, and I'll show you how to do it. Right, so just to explain a little bit more about what I've done here and why we do this. So at the moment, if we started with a full panel, by the time we get to the end of our ceiling at the other end, we'd have this much left to cut off. Now that's really difficult, and obviously that's a lot of wastage. So by taking a little bit more off, we get a better cut at the end and we waste less panels. So that's the reason that we're doing that. So when we get to the other end now, we'll have something like this amount to cut off instead of this amount to cut off. So before we do the scribe to the back wall, I just want to talk quickly about the orientation and which way you want to set your panels out, just to make this as easy as possible. So I always like to go tongue into groove. So if you look here, we have this part that goes into that part and it clicks in. So your first ceiling panel, you want to make sure that the groove is the one that you're going into and you're cutting off the tongue. Right, so now I've got my panel up. Like I said, I've just screwed it temporarily because I'm on my own. So now we're going to get the piece of wood, offer that up to the back of the ceiling, and then we can use this piece of wood to go all the way across and mark that with our pencil, and then that'll give us a perfect profile on the panel of this back wall. Nice lovely fit when we come to cutting it as well. So now we can just edit that. Just like that, a little step. Now we've got a line on the panel, we can start cutting. So just get your wood saw, nice and gentle. Now we're happy with our first board, it's perfect, we've got everything right, we can move on to gluing it. So what we want to do is grab your pink grip and your gun, and then I'll show you the best way to do this so you get the best adhesion. So if you come in a bit closer. So we're going to start at the top, and you don't need loads and loads, just a nice bed, and then you're just going to do S shapes just like this, all the way down the panel. So because we've cut this edge off and we haven't got a panel going into it, this is not going to have any fixings apart from the glue. So we want to make sure that we run a bead of glue all the way up this edge on the back. This will just mean that it doesn't sag anywhere, because on this side we can put mechanical fixings in as well. So we've got our adhesive now on our board, and now we can fit it. So all you're going to do, very simply, be careful not to cover yourself in adhesive as well when you do this. Get your board into position. So just use the palm of your hand and just compress the adhesive, especially along this back edge. That's the main part really. And that's your first board in. And now all we have to do is repeat the process all the way along. Even though we've obviously glued it, that's fine, that's enough. If you don't want to do this next step, that's completely up to you. I just like to do it. It's just a bit of a habit more than anything. So if you're screwing your ceiling as well, obviously this is part of the reason why you want to go tongue into groove, because you need access to this part to be able to screw it. If you leave the screws proud, you will struggle, well, you won't be able to get your next panel in. So if you have one like this and it's proud, you need to sink that in a little bit further, just to make sure that you can still get your next panel in. So if you're struggling to get it in and you have screwed it, just check that all your screws are sunk in enough, because that's probably your problem if you are struggling. Cool, so now I've got the first one in and it's all screwed up and we're all happy. I've cut the second one off camera, ready. So now I'll just show you these going together. The main thing with this is just take your time and be careful. You don't want to rush this. You will find it wants to bow and stuff in certain places if you don't have hold of it fully. So if we offer just one corner up first, and then if you just slowly bend your panel in, just like so, tilt it back, and then this is where you need to look across and just give it a little push and work your way across, push it together, and then again just compress it with your palms, just gently. It's just some pencil, and that's it, that's them together. We can put our screws in again if you want to do that, or that's just it. It's as easy as that. Panels up to the last one done now, so I'm going to talk you through how we do the last panel. Similar to the first one that we did where we talked about scribing, we're going to do something similar, but obviously we're going to mark the panel up instead of putting it on the wall and then drawing it on. So first thing you want to do is mark out on the length side every 300 millimeters, and that's where we're going to take our measurements from. So every 300 mil, and again to the end. And then what you want to do is, from the wall to the groove, that's where you're going to measure from. So we're going to go down the length of the panel, so we've got 61, and then just draw that on here, 63. So this will account for variation when you're going down your wall. Obviously between that point and that point, there's a 2 millimeter difference. So if you just cut it at 63, it obviously wouldn't go in, or vice versa. If you cut it short, then you'd see a gap, which you want to try and avoid. That's 300 again. And I will come down and just show you exactly where I'm measuring to and from on an off cut, because it's quite difficult to see. And this one's the corner. So we've got our measurements now marked on the ceiling, every 300 millimeters like we said before. I've just written them down on a scrap piece of panel. You can use a piece of paper or whatever you've got. Now we want to do the same for our panel. So if you grab your piece and just think to yourself, which way is that going to be going in? Because this is the main mistake that people make. So we're going to be going in that way. So I need to start my markings from that corner where I started there. So exactly the same as we did on the ceiling. We're going to mark down the panel every 300 millimeters now. Just like so. And that's the M1. And then just get your measurements. And then if you come in a little bit closer for this, just to see this. So when I'm measuring, like I said, we're going from finished end to finish end. We're obviously going to put this side into this piece, which is on the ceiling. So we're going to measure from that edge there, if you just want to come in and get a close-up of that, Lewis. So we're going from the finished edge of the panel, not this end. So then we can get his marks on all the way down. And continue that for all of your marks. Now I'm going to grab my straight edge and just join all those points up so we get the profile of the wall onto our panel. Then we can cut it, try it in for size, and it should be a perfect fit. So we're going mark to mark, not trying to mark them all at once. Every 300 millimeters just between those 2 points. Just like that. So now I've got all the marks connected together all the way along the panel. So that's the piece that we want to keep. So the skinny bit with the tongue, and then we're going to cut on this side of the line so we get our nice accurate cut. So we've got our piece cut now. You can see the measurements a bit clearer on the ceiling now. It's not perfectly straight. So this will be very similar to what you'll probably come across when you do your own ceiling. Now what we're going to do, we're just going to offer it in, just up to the wall, and then what you can do, if you get your pencil and just mark on this edge, on the far edge, at the top, middle, and bottom on the ceiling panel that you're coming up to, just like this. So if the lines that we've just marked on the other panel are the same distance as this, we know then that this is going to go in easily. So I can see that we should be equidistant all the way along. And when you are measuring these, obviously you're going to be putting either a trim or a silicone line round. Don't make this too tight so that you struggle with it. Just give yourself a millimeters play or a couple of mil if you're not that confident, if it's your first time. If you do cut one of these short, don't worry too much. We sell lots of trims that can help you cover all this up. We'll do a separate video on that as well, show you how to fit all those if you do want to do that, but this is just a generic for everybody, a way of doing it. So now I'm happy that it's going to go in. I'll get it glued up and then we can offer it in. A final piece. Just be gentle, work your way across. Make sure you've got it in all the way along. And that will just slide in like that. And that's us all done. That's how you fit a ceiling. Thank you so much for watching this panel company video. Join us next time where I'm going to be showing you how to fit spotlights into your ceiling as well. We'll see you in the next one. Please like, subscribe, comment if you need anything. All the stuff that we've used in the video that you can buy from us will be linked in the description as well. And we'll see you next time.